Tom, you're very welcome, as I hope I've said, but thank you. I look forward to your talk. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I like to start this all the time with two things, trying to address the people who are easily offended and the people who are easily distracted. We'll start with the easily offended first. I always like to start with some disclaimers, basically an apology before I have to use one. My idea is that when we talk about people, we need to talk straight. We have to be honest with what's really going on. There's a lot of challenges with people. We've got great people on teams. We've got the exact opposite. And so we're forced to work with both because the labor supply, and I think everywhere we go, is pretty limited. So today, for the next hour, actually the next 3 days, when I talk people, it's going to be real straight talk, maybe a little offensive sometimes because you're thinking of specific people that you work with, and what I say might not apply. But for other people in the room, this might apply exactly to the team you're working with. So we're going to start with that. We're going to start with being honest. A lot of times, what I have to say, it's just in the generalization. It's not specific to one thing, one person, one team, or another. So bear with me that if it seems very general, that's on purpose. The other apology I want to make is that we're talking about people, and a lot of times there's different types of people that we're working with. Laborers tend not to be wired the same as a lot of the owners of the dairy farms. And when I speak to my friends who work in other industries that are working with all college graduates, and I say some of the things that I say or tell them the stories that I deal with on a daily basis, it bothers them because they can't believe that some of the things I'm saying is even true. But the reality is not everybody has the same background, the same way of thinking that the people who are sitting in this room. So as I speak about people management, I'm speaking about a lot of labor-type people, and they don't exactly see work the same way as we do, okay? So there's my apology. I'm sorry for anything that offends you. The whole idea is that I want to disturb the comfortable and kind of comfort the disturbed, so that's that part. For the easily distracted, if there's one thing you can take away from today, here's what it is. For the next 45 minutes, feel free to zone out. I'm giving you the one thing right now. Good people, you've got good people. These are the three things they want. And we're trying to manage 4 good people. If you have people that you just are really frustrated with, we're not trying to bring down your management practices, your management techniques to your worst people. I have so many customers that say, well, what do we do with this person? We get rid of them. See, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to have to say. Nobody wants to do that because it might be somebody's cousin. It might be your neighbor's kid. The problem is we can't run a business with the lowest common denominator. So we want to run a business with systems that work for good people. And good people want these 3 things. It starts with respect. We shouldn't have to say that, right? But it's easy to be in a hurry, to be busy, to be thinking about everything else, and we walk by our employees without saying hello, without ever checking in on them, and they feel disrespected, unappreciated. What I'm going to talk about over the next hour are a bunch of soft skills. Everything I just listened to went way over my head. All the data, you're not going to see a bunch of slides with data. I don't understand all that data. I'm more of a soft skill kind of a guy. And I've heard that a lot of guys in the UK aren't soft skill kind of guys. Neither are the men in the US, so this is always a challenge for a lot of dairy owners and managers to get their heads around that part. But we all know what respect and appreciation is all about, and that's what we have to think of. The next thing is order. I think that any business, any household, any classroom, anything needs good structure. And oftentimes I walk into a situation where there just is no structure. There is no order. It's what's the phrase? The crazies are running the asylum. So when you think about a classroom if you have kids in a grade school, the teacher, the first thing they have to do is establish order in their classroom. Otherwise, no teaching, no learning gets done. At a dairy farm, anywhere, if we don't have some structure or order, it's a free-for-all. And good people don't want free-for-alls. It's like playing sports. If there is no referee, the biggest hooligans are gonna run the game, and there isn't going to be any kind of structure or order to the game that needs to be played. Finally, it's opportunity. What I've seen is that so many people on the labor side, the working guy, they already know that they're not going to run the farm. They're not going to own the farm, all right? They have no ambitions of owning a farm, but they don't want to be in a dead end. They don't want to start something that they know that they can't get that far. So we have to create some sort of opportunity for everybody. Now that opportunity might not reach the same level as yours, but we definitely have to show somebody that by starting here as a milker, as a laborer, it's not a dead end within the first 2 months. We have to show people that there's an opportunity. My big thing with my customers is we want to create lifers in the dairy industry. We want to create people who, or we want to have people who know that they can start at a dairy and stay there, that it's not a 2 years, 3 years in, and then you realize it dead ends and you have to go look to the neighbor's farm, because that's the only place you can find another opportunity. We want to show people that whether you never leave the most general basic jobs at a dairy, that there's still a good career there. Now, I realize in an industry that relies heavily on immigrant labor, lifers might mean 4 years, okay? They might be going back within just a few. Okay, if 4 years is our max, we'll take it. But 4 months is hard to get any kind of results, all right? So these, if you want to tune out from the rest, that's your main takeaway. There's 3 things that good people want. It's respect, order, and opportunity, okay? So the big question that I like to think of is, would you work for you? Chances are you would work for you, because you're a pretty good guy, pretty good gal, right? A lot of fun. But the reality is, even if you worked for you, you're really not working for you because you're doing other things. You're not the direct boss for a lot of your employees. So even though you would be a great person to work for, chances are working for you doesn't even mean working actually with you. It's sort of like this hotel. I don't know who the top person is at this hotel, because I haven't probably met that first person, the CEO, the president, the general manager of the site, but I've met all the people at the check-in, the reception, the bar. Those are the people we work with. So when you think about your business, you really think of, what does working for me mean? Do I have a manager in place that chases people away, or builds them up and develops people to make a successful team? So what does working for you really mean? What's it like to be an employee at your dairy? Think of the first week. Okay, you hire somebody today. Okay, maybe not today because you're here at the conference. But in a week when you start, on Monday you start. If you're following along, I've moved a lot of stuff around. So just use it as paper. But to follow along, there's probably not a whole lot of value in that. I'm sorry for that. My other apology. If next week on Monday you hire somebody new, what's that like? I'll tell you, back in Wisconsin, what it's like is the owner's busy. He points them to the parlor. Somebody's in the parlor who tells them where the boots are for the first day or where the gloves are to start milking cows, and that's it. Until we need to get his paperwork filled out so we could pay him his first check, and then the boss shows up saying, hey, my wife needs you to fill this out because she can't do the checks until it's done. And that's it. So what kind of a welcome is it if you're a laborer and you see the boss in passing, and that's it? And then on top of that, what's the welcoming committee like within the team? Ironically, we have the same level employee training the other coworkers, and those guys are trying to protect their own turf. They can't train them too well, because within 2 weeks they're better than them. So they're kind of holding people back a little bit so that they don't just jump right over them. So in that first week, we've got somebody who doesn't really know what to do. The people who were supposed to tell them how to do it, well, they give them half of a story. And then within a few weeks, the boss is coming over, somebody's telling what they're not doing right. So then the question is, would you want to work for you? And I run into a lot of situations like that back in the States that I can't think of any place I'd really want to be part of that team, because the onboarding for new people is really poor. So the question is, what's it like to work for you in that first week, okay? This is a thing I probably will end up stepping on a lot of toes when I look at all the companies and all the people who are here. You're cow guys, right? And everybody says, I mean, I just saw it the other day on the cover of a magazine back in the States. It's all about the cow. There's advertisements from companies that are here. It's all about the cow. And I just want to call bullshit on that, because it's about the people. Everybody has cows. Why, if it's all about the cow, all you need is cows and you make money, right? Start swapping people around and you'll see what your dairy is really all about. And my point is, it's all about the people. The foundation, the title of this talk is about your dairy's foundation. You're at the foundation. This is that inverted pyramid, right? It's that servant leadership pyramid. The boss at the bottom. And everything from the top actually works up through your managers, to your team, up finally to the cows, to your processor, and finally to the person who makes this whole industry run, the consumer. It's not about your cows. Your cows are just part of the game. But if you as a manager don't set the tone, if you don't have a plan in place, a strategy, something in place that says, this is how we take care of cows. This is how we take care of our business. By taking care of our people, our managers, who then pass that along to your employees. Now, I get it. There's probably not a lot of levels if you're a 200, 300, 400 cow dairy, but they're starting to add up, right? From 300 to 500 to 1,000, you start bringing on more people. More people means some management. And those layers that you used to have a real flat structure, where it was just you and the workers, now there's somebody in between. So the better you do working with your people, the better it flows up to your team, through the cows, to your customers. And if you look at those yellow arrows, those gold arrows, that's the money coming back, right? It's just one big cycle. It starts with the strategy, the plan, the execution that you guys start. And it works through your people, to your cows, and back to you. So the reality is, you depend on your team, they depend on you. And most of the time, I really do get to work with some good people. So as I say some of these things, I don't want you to think that it's all doom and gloom when it comes to people management, although that's where the source of your headaches come from, right? If it's not cash flow, it's people. So a few things I want to ask you to stop saying, okay? I hear a lot of people say back in the States, well, if I could speak Spanish, maybe over here it's if I could speak Polish, right, or Russian, or whatever that language could be. And I say, look, you and your wife speak perfect English, and you guys can't figure it out. You don't even understand her. And isn't that the truth, right? We think that it's all about the language. A lot of guys say, you know, I need a good translator. Chances are your translator doesn't know the difference between a pen and a pen that you're writing with, right? The dairy Spanish is just that alone takes a lot of time to learn, right? So, or dairy Spanish, the dairy Polish or English, whatever the translator's challenge would be. So just the fact that somebody has language doesn't make them a good manager. And if it were true, because we all speak English, everybody can just jump up in front of a group and communicate effectively. I mean, you watch any different football team, the players and the coaches all are changed. Some can get a team to play together and win, and others, they lose their jobs, okay? So please stop saying that's all about language. It's not, okay? Next one is they just don't care. That's our job. We got to figure out how to make people care. Chances are everybody in this room is doing their dream job, or at one point it was their dream job. But the point is, a lot of the people that you have hired, their dream wasn't to milk cows. So by nature, they don't care as much as you do. And the reality is, most employees never will care as much as the owners. And if they do, I start wondering if the owner cares enough, right? So as far as caring, you know, I'd like to say that, yeah, you pay them. That should be enough. But the truth is, we all get paid and we all have our days. We'd like to think that by paying somebody they'd care, but money doesn't work like that, right? I don't want to pick on the English football team, but they all got paid, right? What happened? Hey, we got a heartbreaker in the last, 30 seconds, so I shouldn't be talking soccer, or I'm sorry, football. But the reality is, caring comes from within. Hopefully you have people who care. If not, that's one of their big challenges. But to complain that we can't get work done because people don't care, I just think that's too easy of a cop-out. Last one, we should just tell them what to do. Again, guys, go home. Try that at home. Just walk in the house and just tell everybody what to do. Your kids, just tell them what to do. It doesn't work, right? I mean, if it worked, all the business management and leadership books would just be one page. Just tell them. That's what it would be. But we know people are way more complicated than that. And that's some of the stuff I want to talk about today. It seems obvious, right, that owners and employees are different. I can't even begin to tell you how different you are in the way you think, the way you see a situation. You could be looking at exactly the same thing and you see two different things. So how do your employees think? It doesn't matter. I mean, we have to understand the mentality of your employees, but there's 10 people on your team, and if you're trying to figure out who they vote for and why they vote that way, and who they pray to and why, and how that all started, it's a lifetime of programming. So to truly understand and try to do something about the way people think is really a huge challenge. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I've given up on the idea of trying to truly understand how people think. The truth is, everybody thinks different things are fun, or certain things are normal, or even certain things are what society would think normal. But I can't figure out a lot of people, and truth be told, I've given up on the whole, how does he think? I started realizing, and you're going to love this, right? I started realizing that we have to focus less on how people think and more on how people feel. Again, going back to the stoic British, right? You really want to think about a guy's feelings. Well, I'll boil it down to a really easy part of that. Guys, we don't think about feelings, but we all know that we want to be respected. We want to be appreciated. I had a customer say, that's just, I don't think that way. I said, yeah, but I'm friends with you on Facebook. I see the posts that you put up there. You want to be appreciated as an American dairy farmer. I don't know if you saw the ad from, it was a Dodge truck, Super Bowl 2 years ago. It was on the 8th day, God made the farmer. You guys see that? Yeah. If a farmer tells me he doesn't think feelings matter, that would not have gotten the play that it did. But everybody wants to be appreciated, including the guy who owns the cows. And what I tell everybody is, make the point that you appreciate and you respect your employees, and that alone will go so far, because everybody comes to work with at least the desire to be appreciated. And even if you can't speak to a person, take the time to say thank you. Take the time to just pop in and say something, acknowledge somebody. When you think of the life of a laborer, and I know it's a different labor here. A lot of the people I work with went to 3rd grade. A lot of them have basic literacy. If it's not that they're illiterate, they have very basic literacy. These guys just want to be appreciated for what they do. A little recognition. Not much, just the fact that the work that they do, the toil they go through every day, living in a different country, is worth it. And if you can do something that shows them, and I'm not talking money, I'm saying actual, real human beings working with human beings, and isn't that business? People working with people. If you can make the point that you appreciate and respect the guy who toils every day to make your company successful, try to show them in some way that that matters. So who needs to change? Well, I hear something that back home is they should learn English, and I agree every time that, yeah, your workers should learn English. It's been 7 years. They can probably learn English. But the reality is, if somebody needs to change, it's the person who has the most riding on the game, right? So as owners, you can expect your guys to change. They're leaving in a few years. Or as a person who's sticking around, you've got a lot to lose. You have a lot to gain. So what I ask people is, if it means a little Polish, if it means a little Russian, work on it. The person who needs a change is typically the person who's got the most to gain or lose from it. Okay, so getting back to employee management. There's 2 words there. There's employee and management. Employee management is a lot less about employees and a lot more about management. So often we try to fix and figure out the employee, and since that's a changing person or a changing team, I say, let's focus on you. You're not going anywhere. 3rd generation, 4th, maybe 5th. You plan on being there, hopefully your kids too. So let's work on getting some management skills. One of the hardest things that I see for guys who are starting to grow their business is they focused a lot on nutrition or cow health and very little on people and systems. So how are you going to be a manager if you're really good at driving tractors? I mean, really, how do you manage a business that is heavy on employees that do most of the work when you're so focused on just the cows? I think we have to focus more on the management side and less on the employees so that you can become a better manager. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. Here's kind of my rule of thumb. It's the 4+1 rule. that may or may not be in that set of slides. Again, just use it for paper. 4 plus 1. It's not that my math is bad. I just think that why your team works or doesn't work is a series of 4 plus 1 issues. The first 4 are yours. Those are things that you as owners and managers need to own. You may have hired the wrong person. If you hired the wrong person, there's your answer. It's sort of like if you've got a bad cow, you just keep putting more money into her. Think that you're going to bring her to World Dairy Expo because she's going to do it. If she doesn't have it, she doesn't have it, right? So chances are you've hired the wrong person. That's your answer. Time to move on, okay? Why somebody else might, let's say you didn't. You have all good people. You've hired people who can do the work physically, mentally. They've got all the abilities to do the work. Chances are there's just a lack of resources. Do they have the tools to do their work? In tough times, I see a lot of people trying to work with broken scrapers, skid steers that don't really run, and then we can't figure out why the work isn't getting done. Make sure that your team has the tools in place. You know, it'd be like going to lunch today and no forks. Hard to eat a salad without forks, right? Sometimes we give our teams the work, but not the tools to do the work. So make sure they have all the resources they need, including time. Sometimes it's they don't know. We don't even take the time to tell people what to do. Figure, well, it's obvious, it's common sense. It is to you. You grew up in it. Chances are it's not to them. So if you can make it down to the third one, the last one is about training. It's teaching people not just the what, but the how and the why. If your team knows why and how and they can understand the work, and you've given them the other two things to the team, people who are capable with the tools to do their work, and they know what to do, how to do it, why to do it, you've covered your 4 bases. As an employer, as a manager, you can check off that you've done your job, and the problem relies on your team. It's up to them to care, to want to do it. And I can't tell you how many times we encounter people on a team that have everything they need, and they're missing the last one. I don't know what to do other than try to get that person back on track or out the door. And I know that's tough to hear for a lot of people who say, yeah, but they've been with me for 6 years. I know their wives. I know their family. We go way back. I know. So they should care, shouldn't they? For the same reasons you're just telling me why you care about them, you would think they would care about you because of the loyalty and all the things that you've tried to offer to them along the years. But if you don't get those things for your team, I don't know where to go. So if you've done your 4, it's just one left for them. All right, so the many roles of a manager. You know, when I sit here listening to all the things that all the information that comes your way, I really struggle to think how you run a business like a dairy. There's so much damn science involved. You have to practically be a vet or a nutritionist or something of a high-end thinker here. And now you got people. And then you got to deal with the government. And then you got to deal with your neighbors. And then you've got so many things that you got to deal with. So you do wear a lot of hats. But it goes with the territory, right? Of all the different things, whether you're a cheerleader, a teacher, a cop, a referee, I think of all those roles that you do, I think these are the 3 most important roles. The gardener, the ref, and the server. Okay, the gardener. I know you guys aren't gardeners, but you do have beautiful, beautiful gardens. I'm an old landscaper by trade. So that makes sense to me. You got to pull the weeds. You got to spray your corn, your maize, right? I keep calling it corn. All right, you got to spray it to kill the weeds. Otherwise, corn can't grow, right? So if you don't pull some weeds, how are you going to grow the good people? As a gardener, you have to see, hey, if this person is really the cancer, why are we still trying to grow the rest? We've got to pull out the person who's causing the damage to the team. And typically, every team has one. The problem is sometimes you try to pluck one person out and somebody else just takes their place. So that's not the perfect strategy. It's a little more nuanced than saying we'll just always take out our worst employee. But the reality is, if you've got somebody in your team that's taking down the rest of the group, you got to do something about that person. As a referee, I can't tell you how important this is. I've seen groups of dairy teams that were satisfied when somebody was reprimanded or just called out for the stuff they were doing, and the whole team act as if they got a raise, right? As if everybody got paid more just because a manager took care of somebody who was breaking the rules. Because if they have to come to work on time, and if they have to follow the protocols, why does this person seem to not have to follow those rules? And when that continues to go on, they start losing trust in the whole place. There's not a lot of safety, a lot of security in the fact that they can trust that what's said is done and what you say you really mean. So if you act as a referee to make sure everybody's following the rules, playing by the same rules, not only do they know that it's a fair place to work, and I hate the word fair because everybody has a different definition of it, but they also know that they can trust you to do your job. Finally, this is the bottom one, I think, is one of the most important rules, or the roles, and that's that of a server. If you think of a restaurant who you've got a waitress, waiter, a server who's just running, what do? They go from the kitchen to the table to the bar to the table to the kitchen to the table to the bar. All day they're just moving. Nobody really wants to wear off their boots every few months, but on some level, as a manager, your job is to manage. Move around, serve your people, see what's going on. If you stay in your office all day, it's hard to see what's going on outside, right? If you're in a tractor all day, it's hard to see what's going on where your employees are. What I tend to see is a lot of people like to do what they like to do, and they avoid the rest, myself included. You didn't get into dairy farming because you like people, right? You like cows. So if there's two things on your list, go talk to the person who's not doing their job, or check out your cows. Who's going to get your attention? Yeah, you go where you like. We always do that. I look at my list of clients to call this in whatever day. I always pick the fun, easy ones. It's Wednesday, Thursday by the time I get to the other ones. We're all guilty of that. But the idea is that as a manager, your job is truly to manage. If a milker doesn't milk, a feeder doesn't feed, how do you call him the milker or a feeder? Right? Bless you. If a manager doesn't manage, who's that? Because we wouldn't allow a milker to not milk or a feeder to not feed, the business wouldn't run. So what happens to managing that it just kind of takes a pass? Managers need to manage. And that's the biggest thing that I see, that if of all the roles that you have, it's to be checking on your people, training your people, supporting your people. They need the support, otherwise they could go on autopilot. And you've noticed what happens when you try it, right? It usually doesn't work. Take the time, follow up with your people, be like a server. And that's why I started with that pyramid of servant leadership. As hard as it is, that's your role as a manager. All right, so what's the focus? I'm generalizing again. I'm making it really simple, because that's as deep as I can get. 3 levels. Level 1, those are your employees. They're pretty focused on what they need, their housing, their wage, their schedule, their days off, basically what they get. In the US, we have a real entitlement problem. Everybody seems to be entitled. I don't want to get into politics. I'll kick a beehive here. But it makes managing really tough because everybody's thinking about number 1. On some level, we all do, right? We're all looking in the mirror. How do we take care of ourselves? But on most levels, I see that the entry-level worker isn't so worried about your cash flow or your repro or your whatever issue you're stressing about. They're worried about how big their check is and when they have off, right? Because they have a lot of things they want to do on the weekends, right? So that's the reality of a level 1 employee. A level 3, we'll jump over to level 3. Chances are that's where we're all trying to get to. At some point, we were all level 1s. We were doing the work, worried about what we had to do. Level 3 is the person who's really concerned with their finances, really concerned with margins, really concerned with the numbers, responsible to bankers, responsible to boards. That person's sitting there with the stress of the finances. Often, number 3 never sees what number 1's doing, which keeps them pretty far away from where the rubber meets the road. That's okay. There's a reality to that. that's why you hire a number 2. And if you're in the number 2 role, and chances are you are, that's the boots on the ground, shit on your boots kind of a manager. The guy who's got to get all the work done, making sure that number 3 is happy and number 1 doesn't quit. That's the hardest role at every dairy farm I've ever worked with. Trying to keep the guy at number 3 happy and number 1 satisfied enough to not leave. So if you're in that number 2 role, you're constantly looking from one to the other. And if that's where you're at, I really believe that the dairy relies on you. You might not get paid that way. You might not feel like that, but you're the one keeping everything running. So what's that all about? Well, we set expectations, right? Number 3 makes expectations for number 2. Number 2 makes expectations for number 1. But what happens with those expectations? So often we have these high expectations. And then when we don't get them, and we realize getting there is going to be a lot of work, we let it slide. And it's not so much what we expect, but what we accept. We allow a lot of things that set new tones, that set new standards for your dairy, and then everybody just says, well, this is what we'll do. And it becomes the norm. It becomes what's customary. And then pretty soon, your team realizes you say one thing, and then you mean another. So if there's one thing you can constantly remember is, don't say it if you're not going to follow through. It's sort of, as a kid, my parents would say certain things about being grounded, and then I'd just take the keys anyway. I knew better. But if they let me drive out of the driveway, it worked, right? So if you're going to say something that this is what you expect, know that you really need to follow through, because in a week, in a month, your word really doesn't mean much if you let that happen. And how do we do that? Well, everybody I talk to calls, emails with the problem at the top, the results they're getting, right? It's all about results. And they want results from me within a few weeks. The idea, we'll just go tell them, right? So if you're going to start getting better results, let's step back from the dairy for a second. If your results are you want to run a marathon, what do you got to do? I think you got to work backwards. You got to have better habits. We've got McDonald's every 10 miles on the highways back home, and I'm on the road a lot of miles. I tell you, I eat a lot of McDonald's. I'm not proud of it, but I do. My habits are that I won't get the results. So in order to get the results, I need to have better habits. In order to have better habits, I need to set some clear goals. So with clarity, we set some goals. Discipline keeps it all together, the follow-through. And then accountability is just the answering to myself that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. And if you apply that back to your dairy, what are the results you're looking for? Is it better milk quality, healthier cows, better repro? Well, if you're looking at results, you got to start thinking about the habits that you're developing. If you don't have the habits in place, you're not going to get the results, right? For your work, for your employees' work, if we don't have serious habits that are productive, we're not going to get the results. So how do we get the habits? It starts with the 3 at the bottom. It's clarity, discipline, and accountability. And when I think of all the people that I admire, I think the best trait that they exemplify all the time is discipline. The best athletes in the world, they get up early, they go running. They hit the pool, they hit the bike, they do whatever that is. When they see a McDonald's, they keep driving, they find somewhere with a salad, right? They have discipline. And the question I think we have to ask ourselves in what we do every day is, what kind of discipline do I have in order to create better habits, in order to reach my results? So these are the 3 things, the 3 things at the bottom, what we're going to focus on the rest of the day, or the rest of the 15 minutes. Clarity. How clear are your goals? I mean, you have them, right? Everybody has goals for their dairy. Might be related to milk production. Might be we heard a lot about calf management. Could be just quality in general, components. How are you going to get there? So we start with clarity in order for us to create that map. We set our expectations. These are our goals. But then we have to have some sort of structure. And that's the one thing I think that when we start this process of employee management, intentional employee management, the idea that we're going to actually intentionally work with people, not just when people quit, we're going to start looking at it, or when we have problems, we're going to start looking at it? Is that me? We create a structure. When I ask customers what they attribute a lot of our changes in their employee management style, where it was, say, well, we just wing it around here. When it comes to people, we wing it. We've got a plan for every building we're going to build. We have a plan for every ration. We have a plan for everything, but when it comes to people, we wing it. Do you have a plan for your employee management? Do you have a structure? Do you have policies? Do you have job descriptions and employee manuals? I know that all sounds pretty exciting. The reality is nobody wants to do them. Chances are you don't even need them until you actually need them. Like insurance, right? Until you have a, knock on wood, until you have a fire, you didn't need insurance. But the day that something burnt down, you're sure damn glad you had it, right? That's what all this is for. Because a lot of times we don't realize we have any problems until somebody's ready to quit or start supplying at the neighbors, whatever's going on. Then we realize we didn't have any structure in place. When somebody brings their family over, now they need a place for their wife to live, and you think, geez, we don't have this in place because now everybody else wants a house to themselves. So we never had a policy for that. How do we get into those problems? Well, we stay out of them by the design of our structures, our systems that we have in place, which leads us to SOPs. When we have a base work for all of the policies and the procedures we have some clear SOPs that say this is how we do each job. We all know that the work that you guys do is science-driven. This isn't just what feels right, although a lot of us probably manage that way. There's a lot of science behind it. And milking cows, we need a protocol. We can't have two different shifts milking completely different, although that's generally, that tends to be the case. But if we don't have a policy, how do we go back and correct it? How do we go back and tell somebody that what they're doing was wrong when we never told them what was right? And that's what we'll be working on in the workshop on clarifying that kind of stuff on Thursday. So that leads us to the next one. Discipline. It's all about follow-through. It's so easy to get focused on one area of the business and then in a week read some article and say, oh, I know what we got to do. This is going to change everything. And then we get focused on that. It's kind of a flavor of the day, kind of a management style. We need to have some discipline. Of all the little things you could do, all the little silver bullets that are out there that you think are going to solve everything, walking the pens and seeing cows standing tells you a lot more than a 3-week study from the university. Sorry, university guys. But the reality is, if you're out in the barns and you see what's really going on, that feed isn't in the bunks, it's not being pushed up, that'll probably answer a lot of your questions, the simple stuff. Just going out there on a regular basis to see what's going on. It's amazing when we do a walkthrough and the owner says, boy, I didn't realize that was going on. Or they kind of just shake their head a little bit embarrassed, saying, oof, let's keep walking, right? And that's a reality. That's everywhere. You're in good company if that rings a bell, okay? You really are. Some of the best producers I know feel the same way. But we have to have the discipline of follow-through, okay? Training and teaching, I'd like to think that kind of is a no-brainer, that when people get hired, we have to train them. But most people learn from the guy who is already there, whatever the job is. And if that guy wasn't doing it right, well, that's okay. Everybody is doing it based on him, so at least they're consistently not doing it right, right? So what's the program for teaching and training? Chances are you don't have one, and that's okay. You can always start. Most companies don't really have that good of training. I was talking about McDonald's before. That's a company that has training right. I mean, they can go into any town in any part of the world, hire 15-year-old kids in high school, and they'd still get the work done because of their systems. So if we focus on that training and that teaching, we'll know that people know what to do, and that leads us to the last one. The whole thing about discipline lends to predictability. And I really believe that people, especially in an entry-level position, they want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. If they wanted the risk of the gamble that you guys live through every day with prices, commodities, all the different things that could go wrong in the course of a day, they'd be looking for that too, or they would be trying to find that. But most of them want to know how many hours, how much, how many days, when do I get a day off? They want to know those things so they can just bank on it. And that predictability, that certainty in their life is one of the biggest values they have. So my thing is, let's give it to them, right? Let's have that focus on saying, look, if our team wants a predictable outcome, if they want a certain certainty in life, let's work on giving them that. So they know what to expect every time that they come to work. If somebody's late, they already know what's going to happen. It's not, he may or may not give me a warning. She may or may not say anything. We have to be more predictable so people know, oh, I'm going to get it now. I know what happens next. That's the kind of result we get from discipline and predictability. Last one here, accountability. Everybody says accountability starts with you. Well, it actually has to start with me, and then it has to start with you, but because you say it starts with me, right? So often we want everybody around the table to be accountable, and then we have this big list of things that we have to do, and then we start asking everybody if they've done their list, and ours doesn't have any check marks on it. We have to set the example. We have to set the tone for being accountable. I find that accountability is one of the hardest things to get from employees. I don't know what it is. I suppose it's probably been like that forever, right? But there's a lot of things that we do in the course of a day, and if I don't do my work, and if you don't do your work, pretty soon the whole team starts unraveling. And what I see is the biggest teamwork killer, it's that. If I don't do my job, you start seeing me slacking, and then you get upset because let's just say I left the parlor walls dirty, and now you have to clean them. You say, well, screw that. If he didn't do it, I'm not doing it. And then the next shift, it comes back, and pretty soon we've just got this huge, vicious cycle of inconsistent work, things just not getting done because we didn't have any accountability in place to say, hey, we all got to do our job, starting with me as the manager, making sure you do your job as a milker, right? The whole thing about accountability is there has to be a cause and effect. You have to be able to see the rewards and the consequences. The person who doesn't show up on time, the person who's late, the person who is hungover, the person who doesn't do the milking routine, the person who doesn't do their job, they can't get paid the same as a person who does, right? So, right.
So what do you do about that situation? Because they're setting a bad example. You're not just boss.
Right.
Because you understand why they're doing it.
So if I'm late, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for every team that has a top performer. Let's just look at sports. I'm going to pull out of the dairy world, and I think we can understand this. We've got a guy who really plays well all the time, but he's a jerk. He's a prima donna on and off the court, right? But he's really good, so coach keeps him around. Everybody else on the team who shows up and busts their ass every day to prove that they belong on the field gets upset with that guy, right? At some point, we have to stop making excuses, I believe, for the people who because on some level, everybody brings value. There's sales teams, I'm sure represented here, that they have people on their team that are really good. Their numbers are always out of the park. But they got a bad attitude. They don't fill out their reports. They don't do this. They don't do that. At some point, either we have to tell the whole team that, look, that person has other skills, so we're going to let them slide on a lot of the rules. Not you guys. I mean, you guys are good, but not that good. And then we start creating another rift in our team. Not that we don't want to have some empathy for a person who has kids to drop off or a bus schedule to meet or all these other things that could create a conflict for getting there on time. But I think that the easiest thing we can do for work is being on time. Of all the jobs at your farm, the easiest thing for me is to show up at 6 o'clock. After that, things get tough, right? So on some level, where do we draw the line that say we've given this guy a pass because he's good at AI, so he doesn't have to be here on time? When I've seen that happen, because it happens, the team unravels. Because he's not held to the same standard as the rest of us.
What if you can't explain to the rest of the team?
Well, see, and I think to even try that is dangerous. I think you have to have the sit down that with a person who's that valuable, They should be able to know that be smart enough to know that I really have to be there on time. Or change the schedule altogether. So if he's 30 minutes late, say, hey guys, from now on his schedule, bless you, his schedule is going to be 9:30, not 9. Whatever it is. Because allowing that to happen over and over just sets the wrong tone. And 7 other people aren't going to understand what you see. Again, it goes back to the way you see it. The rest of the labor team isn't going to see it like that. They're not going to see that, well, I get it. He's hard to replace. And there's nothing worse, and this is going on right now in Wisconsin, is guys literally say, well, what's he going to do, fire me? There's nobody else applying. That's a tough place to be held over the barrel like that, to know that you can't even get rid of bad people because there's nobody else to take their job. But that becomes the new reality for us. That probably doesn't answer your question very well, but I would have a sit-down with a one-on-one with a guy who's that good and say, look, you're putting me in a bad spot. He can juggle. Ultimately, we want to have a meritocracy where people perform and get rewarded for that. I want to talk about that a little bit more tomorrow and on Thursday. The point is, we do get paid for performance. We do get treated differently for the results that we get. That's life. We learn that on the playground, right? It sucks being the last guy picked to play at recess every day, but there's a reality that the top people get picked first, okay? It brings us back to this pyramid of results. If we create good habits for our farm, for our team, through clarity, through discipline and accountability, everything else flows. Your team depends on you. Your cows depend on your team. And everybody who enjoys what the dairy industry brings to the world benefits. And when the customers benefit, it comes right back to you. Being a manager who has clear expectations, who's disciplined on a daily basis to hold people accountable, starting with himself, herself, you can create those habits and you can get those results. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for Tom before we just go for the break that anyone's got? Yes, please. Do we have a...
Okay.
Just bear with me.
Yeah, I heard about it on the news. Just
Can you repeat that, Tom? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, we're talking about the video that just came out in Canada last week, or in the last few days. There was another one. Maybe I should just leave it at that one, right? But there was another one about 20 minutes from my house. Just as bad, worse. They actually went after DiGiorno Pizza, which was the retail brand that everybody knows. So they targeted DiGiorno, which then came back to the cheese processor, who then went back to the producer that went back to, I mean, it was brilliantly marketed. I mean, not that we like that, but they did it right. It leaves a real wake in the whole works. There guys I know, actually, I've worked with before, not at that farm, but a different one. They ended up going through the court system and fines and spent some time in jail. It's a mess. It really is. What do we do? Is that the question? What? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So the dilemma that we went through, because it was so close to home, was, well, where do we start? Do we just not we don't allow cameras on the farm? Well, that wasn't the real problem. The problem was the abuse. It wasn't the cameras. The cameras caught it, but they wouldn't have caught anything if there wasn't abuse, right? So, and it wasn't necessarily the CCTV. Was it exactly the surveillance, or was it, yeah, it was the hidden cameras on cell phones. So here's the thing. If your employees aren't trained at all, and rumor has it that's what happened in Wisconsin, I really have a hard time with that, because now we've got employees who doing their job, if they weren't trained at all, I mean, yeah, they should know not to be doing what they're doing, but as the custodian of the farm, you guys, as the, steward of cattle, land, taking care of your people, it really is your job to make sure people know what to do, but you can't control wayward employees. I mean, you could walk out of the barn and 10 minutes later, that could have happened. There's nothing you can do other than have some stuff in place and own it when it comes to town. Hopefully, we're more careful not to allow it to happen. But again, if I had a phone in my pocket at midnight and there's nobody to stop me, I could take a lot of footage of stuff that's actually normal. The videos that we saw, they actually were filming a post-fresh cow, and they used that little spot, that little shot of blood, to show that this cow was abused. And you see that and you think, wait a second, that's completely out of context. She just had a calf, and you can't stop that. So all you can do is train your employees, hope that it doesn't happen, and hold people accountable if they do. To me, it's really a zero tolerance policy in place that you have to adhere to, even if it is your herdsman. As tough as that is, you have to set the tone. I go back, it kind of goes back to the deal with somebody being late. If your herdsman is the one beating your cows, what message does it send to 7 other employees? And at that point, then you can actually have some control over that before it gets to the internet. I don't know if that helps. Yes, sir.
Please, just last question.
Yeah,
please.
I think one of the toughest questions that I've encountered is how do you recruit people?
Mm-hmm.
What do you use to judge who would be a good laborer or not? And one of the best answers I've heard is from a farmer who said 3 really criteria: attitude, attitude, attitude.
Yeah.
But what do you think when it comes to dairy and finding the right people to
Right.
fill in?
Well, over here, it's a little different system than what we have. I can take that. You guys are able to use agencies a lot easier than we can, just by the laws that we have in place. There is no good answer, though. Let me just start by saying there is really no good attitude, or a good answer for beyond just trying to find a guy with good attitude. You think about your first date with your wife. You're on your best behavior, right? So on your, why have things changed, right? But when you first meet somebody who's got a job to offer, I'm going to stand up tall. My cell phone's not in my hand as I'm, right? So you're going to get the best of that applicant. And then from there, it's downhill from there. Like your wife would say, right? Everything's been down. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, but so to recruit good people, you can do so Craigslist is what a lot of guys are doing now back in the States. We find little stores that cater to the immigrant population with some of the main details, this many hours, this much of a rate, whatever benefits you'd say, so hey, we're hiring, okay? But that's not even that effective anymore, just because the supply of good help is down. But that saying of good help is hard to find has been out there forever. We didn't just make it up for the dairy industry. So everybody's looking for good help. I think we're all competing for the same people. The thing that I tell people is start being more creative as far as where and when you recruit. I had a project over in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota, a few years ago. I was working with the Home Depot, big mass retailer. I had to find 4 people. I had like 3 days. From Green Bay, I live 5 hours away. I showed up. I went to the bar that I used to go to when I was in college, and I trolled their kitchen. And I was asking people in Spanish, hey, you looking for work on the weekend? And no, okay. Do you know anybody looking for work this weekend? And I told them what I was paying. I just, wherever you can find people, if you meet somebody with a good attitude and they're your waiter, or they're doing something else, make your pitch. You don't have to be going through the newspapers. I mean, literally, if you come across somebody who just seems to have what it would take to work with you to give, to really be the employee you're looking for, why not hand out a business card? Tell them what you do. In that case, I had the same team of merchandisers. We'd go around and get all the flowers, all the displays looking sharp. We do 12 to 16-hour days. There's always a 24-hour period in there that we had to go straight. And these were the same people I worked with for 4 seasons. And it all started by going into a bar, saying, hey, do you know anybody looking for work? That's how I found my team. And I treated them well. I worked them really hard, but I was right alongside of them. So I earned their respect that I'm not going to ask them to do something that I wouldn't. And we just had a real rapport from the beginning that, hey, we're in this together. But it started because I was looking at a completely different place. Now, I'm not saying go troll in all the bars and all the construction sites. But if you rely on the same methods that everybody else does, you're going to get the same results as everybody else. So don't be afraid if you meet somebody along the way that you just think, God, I wonder if that guy would be interested in working at my farm. I wonder if he's happy working here. I wonder if she would ever want to do that at my place. And then it's up to you to train them and take care of them to stay.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I'm going to have to close it now. I'm sorry about that. I just hope, out of respect for so many things that are going on this afternoon, Tom, I just better just close it, not least because Sandra Godden is starting her talk, and there might be people in the room that are going to go to that in terms of computerized feeding of calves. So we're going to take a break here, but hopefully we can pick up some conversations through the break, Tom. And I just, I'm very grateful to you, and I wish I was somebody that's going to be in the Stevenson room on Thursday, because that's where you've got your session on Thursday. So thank you very much, everybody, for the break. Thank you. Shall I be very quick and just say, can you be back at 4:30? That would be tremendous. Those of you that are going to enjoy